Greetings, Mentats.
Is it recording? Ah.
It is recording, yep. See the
Hi,
little
guys.
red light there? That means we're live.
Thanks.
We're broadcasting. Apologize for the noise. We're sitting in Austin, Java downtown and have only seriously about 10 minutes to do this, so we're going to try to pack some value into that amount of time. And today we're going to be talking about...
Packing
you guys
a lot of value into a small amount of time, basically.
Basically, right. And so we're almost about 2/3 of the way through the program, and Sarah and I thought we'd talk a little bit today about how you might take a look at where you're at right now and start to think about how you're going to land your project. Maybe you're feeling a little stuck or overwhelmed as we start to get near the end, and we're hoping we can give you a few little tips and strategies and frames to keep you moving along.
Yeah, some examples of how we've managed to bring projects from the planning phase to completion in a reasonable amount of time.
Yep. So I think, the first thing to say is, and I'd love for you guys to do this for yourselves as a mini exercise, is I'm sure there's been big projects in your life that you've been able to pull off, even if you felt stuck or the project felt really big. I know I have, and I'm guessing you have too. Can you think of something off the top of your head that would be like a win for you to kind of has you reconnect with your ability to like land something big?
I think a lot of the workshops lately have been that, but an example would be even like, the leadership and facilitation training. When we started turning that into a bigger thing, the first time, that we had to do it, where it was in a location, it was at my home, and we had to get, backjacks for it, and we had to have all the materials, and I had to meet with the team beforehand to make sure that we had a schedule correct, and it was like all these different pieces that had to come together. Everyone had to have an intake call, and like know where it was, and there was a strict deadline of like, this is the day the class is going to be, and it has to be filled by that point too. And
Panic ensues.
Right, exactly, and everything had to be created from scratch. And what I found with that was knowing when the deadline was and setting myself like milestones. Like, okay, a month out, I have to have at least contacted everybody that might be interested in going, or sent an invite out, and be posting content like every week on the Facebook group. And then, 2 weeks out, need to start doing intake calls and have them all done by 1 week out, and at least 2 days beforehand, need to meet with everybody to tie down the plan. So it was like knowing where things had to be, not only to be done on time, but to be done in such a way that I wasn't rushing and like crazy stressed by the end of it.
Yeah.
And also, for me, that was a process of recognizing that not everything had to be perfect the first go around. Like, it evolves over time, and it has, and it's very different now than it was a couple months ago, and that's fine.
Yeah. So to me, you're calling out two specific things. One is that idea that not everything has to be perfect the first time. So that hopefully holding that frame can kind of open things up a little bit.
There's a great
de-accent the perfectionist, frame a little bit and allow things to move if you're feeling stressed or stuck.
There's a great phrase that I remember for that, which is the best is the enemy of the good.
I love that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if it's good enough, like if it accords enough with the core values of what you're doing to work, just go with it. Don't assume that it has to be perfect before you launch anything. And in fact, do your field research by launching initial versions of it and letting them be wrong, which is basically what we've done with this mentorship program. And in my mind, it's worked out fantastically versus us doing months and months of pre-research and resource setup and then launching it for payment. Yep. This has been more fun and more effective.
Yeah, and what you're saying actually accords really well with a pretty popular business book nowadays called The Lean Startup, where you do just enough to make the product viable, and then you release it and you let your customers kind of move things along from there. And you're talking about kind of like a minimum viable product for a workshop.
Right.
Like, what's the least you can do to make it valuable? And then you'll make it more and more valuable as you begin to get feedback. So that's a great frame to think from too. It's like, instead of blowing out everything exactly the way you would envision it if you had unlimited time and money, just strip it down to the bare essentials.
And be aware that you can set context that that's what you're doing. Like, if you're worried about, oh my gosh, like, take Brave's project and bringing authentic relating to new areas. If you're worried about going into, say, the YMCA and doing authentic relating and then being like, you don't know what the heck you're talking about, like you're trying to pitch us, you can just set the context of, hey, this is a test that I'm doing to try authentic relating in new areas, and that's what this practice is, and it may not be perfect the first time I say it, but I'd love to be in a conversation with you about it.
I like that. I think think you pointed to another piece that I really wanted to call out too, which was this idea of working backwards. I remember you saying like, oh, you had some vision of like the steps that needed to happen along the way. And I do think one of the things that can trip folks up when they're planning bigger projects is the tendency is to think from where you are forward. And that is certainly useful, but another really useful way to do it is to flip it on its head and think backwards. Like, here's what it has to look like at the end. What would it need to look like a week before I finished? And then maybe 2 weeks before I finished. And by thinking backwards, you actually get a whole different perspective that allows you to kind of back into what you need to do next in a way you feel very confident that you're actually going to get to the end.
And one other thing is knowing your working style. So for me, I'm really aware that like I don't work very well by like kind of, even if I know that something needs to get done 3 weeks out, I need to set myself deadlines in the middle of that and know that I know that I work well in like 6-hour chunks. And I don't work well if I just have an hour one day, an hour the next day, an hour the next day. So I actually have to set aside like, this is a chunk in which I'm going to work. I'm not going to meet with people during that. The only thing I'm going to do is get at a coffee shop, have my computer, have coffee, have food, and then just like work straight through.
I know what we call it. It's your bubble of workitude.
All right then, I haven't heard that before, but I'm going to use it. Yeah, so know what your working strategy is and whether if you work better with deadlines or if deadlines stress you out and you work better in like manageable chunks, and really pay attention to that and have somebody to help keep you accountable. Nice. So you're sure that you do get something done, because as you start to get it done, one win leads to another.
Yep, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking of an example that actually calls a few other points that would be, I think, worth exploring in my life, which was I had a music studio when I lived in Pittsburgh, and we had an album that we got maybe 25% of the way done. It was this really talented artist, and then the studio fell apart, and I had these recordings, and I had always wanted to finish it. And it was years and years later, and I actually ended up calling a friend of mine who had a little bit, so I had like some of the expertise I didn't have, and we just kind of ground through it in a week. And the thing I remember most about that is that we established this routine of like just working back and forth. And once we had once we had like a rhythm, then even though there was a massive amount of work to get done in a week, we were able to make tons and tons of progress because we had arranged a rhythm for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the two, and I'm really proud of that. I mean, there was no way it was going to get finished unless I picked it up and did it. And it's actually a fully complete, studio album from two guys who mixed it down in my house. And I love the idea of finding a way to have your rhythm. It's sort of a complementary to what you're saying about, knowing your working style, is when you can find a rhythm that works for you. I think that's a really great way to generate momentum. And the other piece from that too is I was able to help myself get into a rhythm and generate momentum because I brought in the support that I needed. And so this is a great time where if you guys are stuck at all, try to think of somebody who has the skill set that you need to bring in. Like, this is a really great time, maybe the sort of the last hour, to start bringing in support for your project so that you can get leverage where you need it from other people.
Yeah, and one other thing to pull out from that is like that idea of ritual, super important. Like a lot of the time, if I'm really stuck on a program or a project, I'll like set up some sort of like nice thing for myself. Like I'll find exactly the place I want to go. I'll have a cup of coffee. I'll put the perfect music on. I'll like have all the pieces that I know have me feeling like I'm giving myself a treat. Yeah. And that makes the work a treat too. So pay attention to like your own comfort. Do you want to work with somebody? Do you want to work by yourself? And I'm having trouble piecing it out because for me, a lot of the thing that helps me get things done is just being aware of what pieces need to go into it, making lists a lot. Of like, these are the things that need to get done. This is like the order. Every new day I have like a new list of the things. I have some idea of what timeline they're going to take. Sometimes I'll use a system like Pomodoro's, which is 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of rest, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of rest. Sometimes I'll even find somebody to co-work with who will do that with me, and then just like crunch through the work non-stop, not letting myself like be distracted except in the 5 minutes that I have.
It's interesting. Like I actually use somewhat of the opposite strategy, which is when I feel stuck, usually moving is what gets me unstuck. Even something as simple as like moving locations. I'm working in a coffee shop and I'm like, I'm done. I don't have anything left in me. I can literally stand up and move to another coffee shop and have a revitalization of energy and keep momentum that way. So that's just a nod to just the different tricks that combine with your style that allow you to keep moving.
And remember, if you feel stuck, one of the things that can move you is just like sending a message to somebody who knows that you're working on the thing. So ping your accountability buddy, ping whoever your coach is, and just let us know that there's a thing. Let yourself feel supported, and then dive back into it. But be aware of how much time you have, and section it off, like starting now. Like my challenge to you for the next day is to like make a map of what your project is, the pieces that need to be done for it to at least feel like a success for you. Like even if you don't get everything done, how much needs to be done for it to feel good at the end of the program? Leaving like, especially a week at the end, just for reevaluation and checking in on how it's been for people so far. And then figure out what you need to do each week to get it done and what's going to be the best system for you to get there.
Yep, and if you're stuck, there's always a way to get unstuck, I think. You know, that can be leveraging an accountability partner, setting a deadline for yourself, moving to a different location, all kinds of different things. Whatever trick works for you.
Yeah.
Even that action outcome exercise we did way back at the beginning is a great way to just pull that out and try it if you feel like you're stuck on something and see if that creates momentum too.
A good way to think of it is in terms of the integral quadrant system of like, basically, do you need a change in like what your body is doing, like physically? Do you need food? Do you need to move? Do you need to take a nap? What is that? Systems, do you need to change the system of how you're doing things or try something new? Like if time management isn't working, try a different time management system like Pomodoro's. If task management isn't working, try a task management system like Wunderlist or Mind Map or Trello. Getting things done is a great way to boost productivity, so that's the systems. If you're like kind of needing like the interpersonal connection to get energy back, consider co-working with somebody or just getting on the call with somebody for 5 minutes to get your self boosted back up. And if you need like personal support, consider like journaling for a little while on what's difficult for you and what you're doing. There's like a myriad of different ways to get moving at any given time.
Yep, I agree. And I think quadrant 1 was the only one you missed, which is sort of the internal, which means if there's maybe you can uncover some belief that you're carrying around that's got you stuck and unload that sucker.
Pretty sure if you call Matt Davis, he'll always be down to help with that.
Yep, sounds right to me. So I actually want to reveal something. I wouldn't call it a withhold, but it's definitely a reveal, and that is that I don't feel as connected to the projects that you guys are doing as I would like to. And I've been thinking about how can I feel more connected, and I'm not really sure what would move that for me, except to ask, to make a request that if you have time to post on the Facebook group, just kind of like a paragraph or two about like where you're at, what's working, what's not working. Just, I'd love a snapshot or a big picture of what's going on for you so that I can feel more connected, and maybe, that'll unstick you in the process if you're stuck.
Yeah, please.
Good?
All right. Thanks, guys.
My brain is empty. We are complete.
No, it's supposed to be a heart. Other half of the heart. Do the.
Like
there
that.
you go.
Oh.
See? Wait, turn it a bit.
The other way. Oh my god. See, clearly we're spatially challenged.
We didn't set a deadline.